You know, I woke up Sunday morning and I kept having two numbers run through my head: 5-4, 5-4, 5-4. I realized that the number five was the number of games that we were behind the Yankees to take the AL division, or at least to match them. And I was hoping on Sunday we'd close that gap. Well, unfortunately, we didn't. But welcome to Baseball Biz. I'm Mark Harbert, your host, and today's a special Rays Up edition. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Matt Germain. Matt shares his opinions, his analysis of what's going on in the Rays organization, not just at the Major League, but what's boiling up from the minors. So without further ado, let's get started. Matt, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm living the dream. Like I said this morning, there's baseball today, there was baseball yesterday, and there's baseball tomorrow.
Oh, thank God. I'll tell you what. In this 162 game season, I think the Rays got about 30 games left. Our good friends, the New York Yankees, when they're behaving themselves, they've got 29 games left. And that 4 and 5 I was talking about, man, I was hoping to see us close that gap right up there with the Yankees being only just 4 games back from being the leader of the AL East. But that didn't happen. Oh, I don't know about you, but watching that ninth inning and watching Yandy at that last final at bat, I wanted to cry.
No.
How are you? Are you doing well? I'm still having problems personally.
I personally think the first mistake was having Ji-man Choi in that 2-hole. He's struggling so much. You can only be so stubborn at this time of year. And if you keep doing that, if you're Kevin Cash, you're letting your team down. And it's not, you're also forcing the issue with G-Man to the point where it's undue pressure on him at a time when he's clearly struggling with a lot of health and whatever things are going on technically with his at bats, but he's completely lost. And you don't put a completely lost hitter in a 2-hole against the Yankees in a must-win situation that's going to get you to the playoffs in a better position. It's much better if they skip the wild card round. And so in theory, you could say Kevin Cash did not go for it this last game. So that's before the Diaz at bat. Like Yandy Diaz sadly had a lot of opportunities in that game too. Like he had some leading up to that moment. And I just, knowing how much he can protect the plate, the fact that he left it to the ump on that last pitch kind of surprises me.
Jeez.
But it definitely was a ball all the way in. So what can you do?
I know, brother. I tell you what, and remind folks, talking with Matt Germain. He's a great analyst, fan of the Rays, but also a man who can break down everything that's going on with them, as well as looking deep into the minor leagues and what we got coming up from there. So you can find him at Matt, MAT _Germain, GERMAIN _. So that's on Twitter at Matt _Germain _. But Matt, prior to the game, I was looking at your lineup. I liked your lineup, man. I didn't see Choi there either. So I thought that sounds like a good thing, unfortunately, because G-Man just he's suffering. So tell us a little bit more about that lineup you had.
Right. So I did have G-Man in there, I think.
Okay, maybe
you just lower in the lineup.
Okay.
So I had David Peralta hitting second, for example, because I figured he was a more, I don't want to call him hot per se, but he was having very solid at bats, which is what you're looking for, right? If you want to extend the innings early on in the game and get the starting pitcher of the opposing team working, you want the guys seeing the ball best at the top of your lineup so you can make them work. And either him or Jonathan Aranda, I figured would have done that, and that's what they did all game long. Both of them, they had great at bats. They kind of wore guys down eventually, and Aranda had the double late on in the game. But I think it's important to put the right guys in, and it's important at the top, especially those first 6 spots need to be solid. And Kevin he seems to have really good days. Like to first 2 game lineups, no problem with them at all. They were solid and they made sense. But this last one, I was like, G-Man in the 2-hole. He's not hitting anything. Like, for the last, like, not just 1 week, not just 2 weeks. It's like a month, 2 months. It doesn't make any sense. He did the same thing with Brendan Lau 2 years ago when he was really struggling, and he kept putting him in. Austin Meadows, same thing. He said, "Oh, he'll figure it out before the playoffs," and then in the playoffs, and no, he never figured it out because it wasn't clicking, whatever was happening. So it's okay to keep them in the lineup because they are key players that can have big moments, but just push them down. Like, it's okay. Like, go give them the chance to work through it, but don't put them at the top of the lineup.
Well, and that's it. I mean, he still was in the lineup because I guess when I glanced at your list, I thought, well, Choi shouldn't be there because he's been suffering so much. And I love the man, but good gravy. And like you're saying, I think an allegiance sometimes from the coach. We've talked about some of these things, I think, with Charlie Montoya, with what he's done with Tony La Russa, that sometimes they have favorites. Even looking back to Pedro Martinez, maybe all the way back to, was it 95 in the World Series? Certain players, it looks like they're suffering. You say, are you going to pull them out? Are you going to keep them up there? But Kevin's loyal. He's loyal to his players. And, even you think all the way back, to Little League. And sometimes you have that kid struggling. You say, oh, okay, I'm going to give Jeffrey a chance here because Jeffrey needs to build his confidence up. So, Jeffrey, we're going to put you number one in the lineup, and you're going to make a difference from the team. And Jeffrey just wasn't ready. So, let's see. Mr. Boone had no problem picking the first guy on the third game who he was going to have in the lineup.
Right.
And
how many runs did the Rays give up in those 3 games?
Oh gosh. I mean, what? It was in the first inning, obviously Aaron Judge, he comes right at bat, first man, boom, home run. But didn't they wind up with like 2 or 3 men they left on base that with opportunity? I mean, that was bloody scary right there. I thought, okay, go ahead. Game over. Let's go ahead and let you guys get score for 4 or 5 runs in the first inning.
It almost would have been easier, right?
Yeah. Extract the tooth all at once and not let me go through a 2-hour session with the dentist because that's a little bit like what it is. Sometimes I just had to get up and get a beverage and walk away from the tube for a little while because it was painful. Oh gosh. But that's what makes the game fun, I guess, is, the highs and lows. If it was all just one smooth thing, and
you got to be happy with what you're seeing from the pitching staff, though. Like, if the Rays can somehow wrap their heads around, having the right lineups at key moments, like just another example, yesterday's lineup, I would have had Jonathan Aranda in there instead of Randy Arozarena. Randy Arozarena versus right-handed pitchers is 250 points lower in OPS than Jonathan Aranda. So why would you why not give him the day off? You just won 2. He's hot as could be. He's going up against Montas, who's a really tough pitcher. Like, give him the day off, let him rest. You've got a long stretch coming up, and put Aranda in there from the get-go instead of sticking him in mid-game. So I don't know. It's one of those things where I know trust has to be earned, but the Rays, I think once they get Kyle Manzardo up there, I have a feeling Kevin Cash's theory on hitting is going to change quite drastically, and he's going to enjoy those big, large leads that they rarely have nowadays, right? It's going to become a more consistent thing. And if you've watched the Biscuits at all this year, it's amazing the turnaround that happened to that lineup as soon as he got there. It's incredible. Just a completely different team. So, yeah, that's what I figured Jonathan Aranda can do to the Rays if he gets in there consistently.
You do so much on giving us insight onto the team of the Rays. And as I was mentioning earlier, as far as the depth that you bring into it, whether it's looking down to see what's going on with the Biscuits, the Durham Bulls, et cetera. A thing you posted the other day after the Rays have played the Yankees with Corey Kluber pitching. And I love that heat map you had there, man. It told the story. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then I want to ask you about how you get there.
Yeah. So the 3D pitching, I always love to take a peek, especially when guys are either struggling or they're kind of walking the tightrope to see kind of what happened in that game, and going back, like, I'll even go back sometimes 3 or 4 games before, if they're about to pitch again, and then I'll look at it during the game to see how it's going during the game and compare it to the last one to see if he's hitting the same kind of spots that he normally does. And it's a great way to know whether or not they have their command, because you can talk about, what you see on TV, where the catcher sets up and everything. But seeing the final result of where it crosses the plate and where that square is and where those pitches are actually being labeled gives you a really good, accurate visual of where the ball traveled all the way through and where it ended up. So then at that point, you can say, okay, well, was he aggressively attacking the zone? And what were the results after that? So if he's able to aggressively attack the zone and doesn't get hit hard, right? That, and a lot of that sometimes can be hitting it at people, right? We know that. That's one of those things. So you got to take a look at the exit velocity and all those kinds of things, the batting average on balls in play. But when you combine it all, you get a decent picture of how good the pitcher is feeling and how he's able to control and command his stuff in the zone. So if he's able to do that and get outs against a team like the Yankees, which even though they're struggling, they still have key guys that can really hurt you. I mean, that says a good amount about him. And also the fact that Cash let him in for that 7th inning. And I love the fact that they kept him, on a tight leash all the way through the season. And now they're kind of saying, you know what, we'll take what you can give us. And in the playoffs, that should help quite a bit. I see if they get, to the second round, I see a start for Corey Kluber, and I'm anxious to see what that would look like, because I have a feeling he would dial it up and put on a good show.
Oh yeah. He's exciting to watch. And that map that you showed us, I mean, the control and how he's able to stay in that strike zone and still beat the daggone batter. And it seems like a strategy, it's a simple strategy, but get the first ball across the plate as a strike. And the pitchers that are doing that, they're surviving. They're doing great things. But Corey, I'm looking for more great things from him to come. I did read one thing the other day about Corey that between innings, he tried to disappear so Cash wouldn't say, Corey, we're going to put somebody else in. And he said, I'll just take the field instead. But I don't know.
On another pitcher's uniform while you're in the dugout and then put it back on when you get out there.
I like that. Oh, gosh. Well, tell us a little bit more about how you come to the understanding of some of the players that are in the minors and coming up. What kind of homework do you do? What kind of resources are you looking at being at some of these?
I watch a lot of games, to be quite honest. Like I really do. So some of the videos are not always great, especially when it comes to the Biscuits. So that's why I don't tend to chirp as much about them overall. But when they do visit teams that have better camera setups, then I enjoy those games a lot more. I still don't understand why these teams have a hard time with cameras. My teenagers or my 9-year-old can set up cameras very well and could hook them up, and they just they're businesses. Like what is wrong with them? Anyway, but I digress. So I watch a lot of games and I look at who they're performing well against and what kind of pitches they're able to fight off, especially with hitters. How they're doing against older competition, how they're doing against elite competition in particular, how steady they are at all times, even when the game isn't on the line. Are they making the small plays or are they getting distracted and kind of zoning out to the point where they make mistakes? Those kinds of things. Like there's a lot of little idiosyncrasies you can catch when you're watching a game. And like I'll give you an example. Oslevis Basabe used to be with the in low A, and he was actually lapse of judgment off it. So my rankings sort of reflected that, but he was being asked to play a lot of different positions. So I kept watching him and he kept improving over time, and he kept, the hands got better, the footwork got better, and over time, because his natural position, he could play third base probably, a level higher, no problem. But when you're asked to move around as much as they are nowadays in the Rays system, you kind of have to go through those pains. And you saw it with Taylor Walls when he was being asked to play second base and third base. Oh, yeah. There was still, even for an elite defender, there was still that kind of time. So over time, while watching him in low A and progress to high A, and especially this beginning of this year, I was like, oh, this is a completely different defensive player. And the same thing with Curtis Mead. Curtis Mead put in a lot of work at third base. Still didn't help his arm strength, but his overall feel of third base was really solid. So it's too bad that the arm strength is just never going to be there. So I always am going to view him as a second baseman or first baseman. But all those kinds of things are things that I watch. For catchers, it's a little bit different. It's more of the block balls. I can't tell what they're calling and what the game plan is. Judging at bats for a catcher in the minors is just mind numbing, because they could have really hot seasons and then be completely lost the next one. So it's very rare that you get a consistent, performance from a catcher at the plate all the way through the minors. They tend to struggle at different times, and it could be for various reasons. Outfielders is a different story. So there are so many high quality outfielders out there that I feel, if they were given an honest chance, could have a go in Major League Baseball. But it's such a competitive realm. And you see guys like Nick Castellanos and all these guys, like clogging up, the corners and everything else. They're not elite defenders, but their bats are so solid that it's hard to move them out. So you've got all these outfielders siphoning through, a lot of them used to be infielders. A lot of them are power hitters. A lot of them are whatever. All of them have warts and all these kinds of things. And the Rays are a good example of that. Like Miles Mastrobuoni has done everything possible to earn a shot to get to the show. Yet he just can't seem to find that chance, right? And it was the same thing with Grant Witherspoon, I think, is getting into that realm now, where he's so he can play all three spots. Great defender, has power, and he has speed. So is he going to get that shot? It's hard to say. It's such a competitive part of the game that in the system you look at it, that the Rays are they're full of guys like Nico Holsizer and Ruben Cardenas and all these guys that have really strong tools and great personalities, and there's nothing holding them back in that way. Hard workers. And so it'll be interesting to see how the Rays deal with the offseason, because they have a lot of good, solid talent to kind of weigh. Last year, we saw Garrett Whitley and a bunch of other guys just walk away and for nothing, right? Kevin Podlow is another one. So I think you're going to see a lot of that happening again this year. But I think the Rays have just such a wealth of infielders that can play a lot of those outfield spots and can fill multiple positions, that it's hard to see them keeping anything but that, right? In a way.
Yeah. And one of the things you're talking about, the infielders, and we kind of have a glut there. I mean, you think about it with Brandon Lau, he's out at the moment. Taylor Walls, my gosh, this guy was practically in the shadows between Brandon and Franco out there. But this time of year, when he's out there, he's amazing to watch. I saw him pick up the ball of the day and practically do 180 or 360, whatever, and get that ball over to first. And he is absolutely amazing. I guess he's stepping up a little bit more on his offense, probably not where he wants to be, but he's getting better at that. So if you got him, if you got Brandon Lau, if you got Diaz, if you've got Franco, and if you got whoever you want to put at first.
Ramirez.
Yes, thank you.
Unless you put him at first. But
Ramirez, who else? I'm looking there and I'm thinking, we've got plenty of choices.
Yeah. Well, Vidal Brujan's in the outfield because of that.
Yeah.
Xavier Edwards will probably end up in the outfield because of that. If you're going to fit in guys like Jonathan Aranda and Curtis Mead at first and second, then yeah, you do have a glut that I can see the Rays moving on from Brandon Lau in the offseason and going out. I propose the kind of deal where they send him to Oakland for Sean Murphy as an example, because they both have the similar control time. Right. They both are impact players at their positions. It would be tough to watch Brandon Lau. I love Brandon Lau. Playoff performances have lagged, but that can be, a year-to-year thing. It could change on a dime. But I do think the Rays are strong enough at second. And if Franco ever plays a full healthy season, you could have Paredes at third, Franco at short, and Walls at second. That could be your three, right? But I will say it would be nice to see the Rays have some patience with Walls, because I do think he has another level at the plate. But give him the competition to drive him. Like, don't just gift it to him. Have somebody else in there that is stealing at bats from him and make him earn it, so that he does keep putting in the work at the plate, so that he does take offense when he's not in the lineup because somebody else is in there with a better bat. Like Oslevis Basabe is not going to sit down because Taylor Walls can play deep. Stevis Basabe can do both. So, you know, if you don't have to sacrifice one for the other, why would you? So the infield is going to be really interesting to watch. Brett Wisely is a player I like a lot in Montgomery. He's a hard-nosed, kind of Joey Wendell type player that can do a little bit of everything and really plays the game hard, plays it well, always gives you 100%. So he's going to be another guy to watch coming up as well. That's going to have an impact possibly as early as next year. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with Al Bruhan. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Brendan Lau. Those are two guys that I think, because the market values them accordingly, that they could dangle if they wanted to and fix the spots that they need to fix.
You said something on a past show, and you said, I think that competition breeds competitive nature, something to that effect. And I thought, yeah, that goes in line with what you were saying a moment ago about, you know, not was it with Taylor? You if you make it say, if you want this to happen, Taylor, guess what's happening here? You've got to step up, and without actually sitting straight face to face saying those words, put him in those situations, and it means a lot more.
Because if Isaac Paredes can play second base solidly, and he's a power right-handed bat, why on earth would you ever put Taylor Walls in there against a left-hander? You never would. So right there, you're losing 50% of the at-bats, because you can put in Yandy Diaz at third base, who's a much better hitter than Walls, and you don't make his D, the difference in D isn't so much. So already, if you're Taylor Walls, you know you're losing 50% of the at-bats, or 40%, depending on how many left-handers are in your division or that you're facing. But still, that's a significant amount. So that kind of competition is what I love about what the Rays have done with Jose Siri, Isaac Paredes. All the guys that they brought in are going to force the issue with others. Like Josh Lau right now, or Lowe. I said Lau. Josh Lowe.
Hard to keep him all right.
He's in AAA right now, just chewing his fingernails, going, what do I have to do to get in there and get a really long shot, right? And they gave him a fair shot this year, but he's an example of somebody that, you know, looks at Jose Siri now with slanted eyes and kind of says, you know.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he's giving him a mean look. But the thing is, Siri is so entertaining. I mean, he's fun to watch. He's got a lot of power. But even when he makes some of these plays out there, he's got a little dance, or he's got a few moves he'll make, or you know, he may not, I don't know about a somersault, but he'll do some things out there, you know, to enjoy that moment for himself as much as the fans. And to me, that's great. So I'm so excited to see, you know, what Siri's done. And I'm looking a lot, but we're just looking at the IL, you know, I'm saying, okay. You know, you were talking about McClanahan. Can't wait for him to come back. Franco, you know, he's going to be back. He played last night, I think, in Durham. The Bulls beat the Knights, I think 7-5. If I remember correctly, Franco had 4 at-bats, I think two hits and a walk. But it shows, you know, the man has a mastery of being able to tell what's coming across the plate. I don't know if he's physically up to being back up to the majors last night, but it was good to see that he was there. So when do you think he'll be back from what you've seen?
The hamate is a tricky injury, and Kevin Pott will live with it forever, trying to come back and kind of, you know, I don't think he pushed it as hard as Franco did in terms of timeline. And I do think Wander is doing a lot of maturing through his mistakes. But I would say another 2 weeks before he comes back, just because you want to make sure that there's no soreness afterwards and that it's completely healed. He might take games off here and there. I don't think it'll be continuous game after game after game. I could be wrong. I can't tell how the guy's feeling. But I will say this. The Rays DFA'd Matt Whistler, and that raised a lot of eyebrows, right? Yeah. But when you know you're getting Tyler Glasnow and Yanni Chirinos, there's going to be a lot more raised eyebrows coming up shortly. So the Rays are going to have a sort of revamped, really odd sort of pitching staff, which is going to be somewhat fresh, elite, and a lot of multi-innings guys that can go through the lineup once, right? And that's intriguing, because I've always said that I could see Major League Baseball eventually coming down to having, you know, 12 pitchers on a staff because all of them can go 3 innings at a time. So you wouldn't have to have a starter or a bulk or anything. They just all do 3 innings each. That would be kind of unique, but the Rays are almost there with the way that things are going. So I'm
and that would be that.
What Glass can do. Yeah.
And think, I mean, that would be a beast too. You think about it. I mean, the one thing you hope as a batter is you could see and guess what that pitcher is going to be doing. You know, you saw him at first at bat, you saw him at second at bat, and at third at bat. Wait a minute, no, he's not here anymore. Mm-hmm. You know, you've rotated in 3 pitchers into me, or maybe like I said, each one of them grabbing 2 innings, whatever, and somebody who's a closer. But it's going to make it a different game if that happens. Mm-hmm. Major League Baseball likes to keep their the thumb on what all is happening and what's controlling things. And I'm going to be interested because changes are coming. The shift, didn't know if it ever go away. It did. It's going to anyway, and how that will impact. So there's going to be other changes. Robo umps. I'm kind of getting out in the world here, but this game doesn't stand still. And I'm going to be interested to see, what MLB does and how it impacts all of baseball and certainly the Rays. But it seems like Kevin's been kind of ahead of the strategy that MLB is trying to put together anyway.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things they're probably going to do, and I firmly believe this, is that you get to keep your DH as long as the starter stays in. And once the starter comes out, you lose your DH. People will hate it. I don't know if they'll force pitchers to hit per se. I don't know that. I don't know if it'll just mean that you skip that spot. I don't know how that would work because you can't just force pitchers to all of a sudden start hitting again. So I don't know. But that's one of the things that was mentioned previously that they might try to do. I don't know that it's something that should be fixed. I mean, pitching is pitching, hitting is hitting. If I firmly believe that if strikes are being called accurately, it'll cure a lot of what they're ailing about. Yeah. And so I hate seeing young pitchers not get the calls because they're not veterans. I hate seeing key calls getting called against guys when they've hit the spot, supposed to be a strikeout. I think it was Springs the other day. He struck out like an extra 3 guys in that game, but it just weren't called, so he didn't get the benefit, and he had to extend himself each time. Yeah. So it's frustrating because, and that's what I mean is now, okay, let's say they do have accurate zone somewhat, right, or consistent is what I would call it, and they're called accurately because of that. Then are pitchers really going to have to be short leashed as much as they are now? Or will they be able to be extended even more than they currently are? I don't know. So hopefully that they wait before they resolve anything on that front, and until the robots, whatever tactic they put in, goes through a couple of years, and then they can kind of see, oh, well, we don't need to do that. That and the pitch clock, to me, are going to be awesome. Because yes, it's going to force the pitcher to make some mistakes. And on the other side, it's going to help them get the calls they're supposed to get. So it'll be a really interesting balancing act.
It was interesting watching the series, like I said, with the Yankees and Rays this past week. And I think it was the second game, 2 hours and 39 minutes. I said, what? I looked up at the clock in the house around after 4 innings. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. But what you're talking about with the pitch clock and all, and some of the changes, and we look at the umps, and sometimes I'll look online, see the ump scorecard and what they say about how much it could have impacted a game. And MLB does put their thumbprint on just about everything. There's been a lot of schools who have trained major league umpires. MLB has had one, minor league MILB has had one down in Vero Beach for years. And I think the training has been not just for Major League, but for people who just wanted to know more about it, people who would wind up umpiring for college or other places in other leagues. I'm not sure how that's going to play because Major League Baseball has taken over that operation. The good thing about that is they're probably going to open it up more. Maybe there'd be a little bit more diversity in the umpires they bring. One of the things they're going to do, I know, is guess what? You're not going to have to pay tuition. You're not going to have to pay, I think, for housing, food, and you're not going to have to pay for all that heavy equipment you got to wear. So those things I think are a big plus. But I always just get a little antsy every time I think this is MLB coming in and controlling things just that much more. I mean, it's their toy to play with, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know.
Video's gotten so good now that they can't hide things anymore. Like I remember watching the game in the 80s. The cameras were so far away, the lenses were so far away that when you were watching it on TV, you couldn't really tell what the mistakes were as much as you could now. They didn't have the square over the plate. They didn't have, so there was a lot more ambiguity, right? In terms of, but now that the fans are so on top of everything and so impatient when it comes to calls that MLB gets wrong, that I almost think they need to take one umpire off the field and have two of them reviewing video at all times and making most of the calls from the booth. If you've got two guys in there and they're watching the cameras and they get the angles they need, they make the call. If they want to check in with whichever umpire was closest to make sure that they all agree, fine. That kind of gives you that. But they don't need as many umpires on there as they have. You can get the majority of the calls from the booth, really.
Do you think that would eliminate the New York, the IROC there?
I don't know. I think we're too lenient on human error when it comes to baseball still. And I think if we can get it right, we should try to get it right. That's all. Like, and it doesn't take an eternity to get it right. Double the camera angles you have, which again, MLB doesn't have enough of either. And have some more gumption when it comes to making the calls. You know, yeah, we have the angle, we have the answer. Boom, there it is. Post it on the board. Don't even go through the just post it on the scoreboard. Safe. There you go, and the crowd roars. Right?
I love it, man. Yeah,
have some fun with it.
Oh gosh, I hope so. To me, that's, we've talked about this before. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's enjoying the game. There's highs, there's lows. I'm going to bring you back to something when you and I talked last time. Mm-hmm. And you said if certain things happen, you would sit down and have yourself a nice big banana split. and here was what you said. You said, if this happened, when it comes down to the wild card, mm-hmm. we see two AL East teams there, and they're the Rays and the Orioles. Mm-hmm. And that's a real possibility, man.
It is.
you might have to get out the bananas and the ice cream and the cherry on top, because that's looking like a real possibility. I mean, there's, like I said, we got 30 games left. Looking at Yankees 29, we could go down the whole list about who's playing who and possibilities. But to me, the Orioles have just keep coming, chomping up their way.
So here is the key. The key. The Rays play the Jays 9 times. They can honestly decide the fate of the Jays if they win 7 of 9, for instance.
Yep.
That can really set back the Blue Jays to the point where they don't make the playoffs. And personally, I would love to see it, because I think the Jays have played cocky all year long. They tried to buy their way into pitching, and they kind of left depth to the 3rd, 4th, 5th, thing that they thought of. And so to me, I would much rather have the feel-good story of the Orioles than the Jays in there that lazily tried to slump their way to a wild card spot, right? So to me, I'm completely in the Orioles corner. The interesting thing is, I didn't think the Central would be this long a fight. I honestly thought the Guardians would keep plugging the way they did and until like 3 weeks ago. But now they've really slid down to the point where the White Sox are back in it. I'm like, what happened? We're supposed to be out.
Yeah,
I don't know. Nobody wants it in the Central, it seems.
I know. I mean, everybody worried, about Tony La Russa when he stepped out. Not that a lot of people were very critical about what he was doing with the team. I haven't looked to see what Castro's numbers are in the last few games as he's managing the team now, but they've done better. And I know a lot of the Sox fans have been pulling their hair up. It's like you say, Guardians are kind of giving an opening. And who else is there? It seems like there's 3 teams at the top.
The Twins. The Twins have suffered through the Buxton injuries all year long, and they just lost Tyler Mahle to IL as well, which was their big pickup at the deadline. So they're in rough. Their pitching isn't there to keep them ahead all the time. But the Yankees are facing them for 4 games. So it'll be interesting because they're highly motivated. They could give the Yankees a good run, and maybe, if the Twins are able to take 3 or 4 against the Yankees, that'll help the Rays out quite a bit. I think the Rays play much better against the Red Sox at home. So it's going to be interesting to see once they face up again next weekend, where things stand.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing the Rays at Yankee Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to comment on one other thing this past week. My wife and I did get a chance to go see the Rays at the Trop, and we saw what the Angels play. Of course, if you want to see Shohei and Trout, and the rain was coming down like crazy. Around the 8th inning, we were heading to the door, when Trout hits a home run. But the thing I enjoyed the most was watching Joe Adele out there in left field for the Angels.
Oh, interesting.
That man is amazing. He ran over and got a ball from 4. He was over in left field, and he had to run so far to get and right up there by the wall to get it. And it was just amazing. And it's one of those ones where people from the Rays teams and fans for that matter, stood up and applauded him for the play. And that's the kind of fanship that I like to see. People who pull for their team, but also respect and honor somebody who did a great play or a great at-bat.
Great baseball, right? Which is like the Cardinals fans are known to be like that. Orioles fans, honestly, are like that. I was surprised. I went to see Derek Jeter's last series in Baltimore, and I was surprised that Jays were playing them next, so I stayed for that as well. But I was surprised just talking to the fans, getting to know people. Like they really pay attention to the game. They're in every moment. They're not, just there to drink beer and slug out the opponent's fans. So it was really fun to talk to them and get to see how they appreciate the game and all the oohs and ahs of each night's play. So I think there's a lot of that in baseball, and hopefully it grows even more over time and baseball gets it right over the long haul, because those fans are why you go to games. Those are the ones you socialize with. Those are the ones that make you appreciate the game as a family environment, right?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I probably said more than once in the show. I used to be a fan host for the Rays, and walking amongst the different aisles and different sections, and you would see some camaraderie, and sometimes you'd see a little bit different isolation out there as well. But it is a great part of the game. What else? Oh, I know one thing I wanted to ask you, and we can wrap with this if you like. Taj Bradley.
Yes.
Are we going to see him this year? Are we going to see him step up?
I keep saying I hope not, but honestly, I saw what coming up in the playoffs did to Shane McClanahan, and it's not every kid that can handle that kind of pressure and that kind of moment. If they absolutely had to, because the rest of the pitching fell apart, but their pitching is extremely solid. If McClanahan fell off and somebody like Glasnow had a setback, maybe they should consider it. He's doing very well in AAA, but there's still a jump from AAA to Major League Baseball. And the later and the more important those games are when you get up there, the more pressure you're putting on your pitches, and you can have a chance of injury because you could overthrow, you could overdo things to the point where your confidence didn't match what your body could handle, right? So just to save him for next year and bring him up with a full head of steam into AAA for the first little bit, bring him up in June, keep the control time, he's only a young guy. He's not old. So let him add up those innings. Like right now, I think he's set to have a career high for innings by far. So let him achieve that. Let him grow stronger, a little bit more in height and everything too. And then after that, he'll be set to come up in 23. I have no problem with that whatsoever. We saw what happened with Shane Baz too. Like Shane Baz is another example, right? And the more you push guys like that, and the Rays are very aggressive when it comes to their pitchers on that front, and I think it's biting them quite a bit more than they're letting on. So yeah, I'd like to wait until next year if we can.
Well, that makes sense. And I look forward to seeing that talent. But like you said, sometimes you just push them out there too quickly and things happen that shouldn't. So is there a chance you think that we'll close that 5-game gap between us and the Yankees before the end of the year?
Absolutely, there's a chance. The Yankees are just a crap show right now. Like, their lineup is ridiculous. It's Judge or nothing. So yeah, the way that I see it is if you've got, let's say the Rays win the next series in New York, they're not going to see Garrett Cole. They might not even see Tyon. They're going to get injury returnee Nestor Cortez, possibly. And so they're going to see a lot of the same guys that they had this series. If I was to bet on better pitching and pen, I'm still betting Rays. So let's say they take 2 out of 3 there. So that's already 1 game gained.
Right.
The Yankees tend to play really badly against certain teams. Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, like those kinds of things. They don't seem to get up for those games for whatever reason. And the Rays are guilty of that sometimes too, it seems, against central teams. So although the Rays have a much tougher schedule, I think the Rays can dominate enough against the Jays and Texas and some of their other series to make up that last bit of ground. So 4 games, where to the point where it could actually end up in a tie by the end of the season or close to it. And so that's why it's important that the Rays win the next series, because if they do, they have the advantage. They need to get that extra win so that they get the tie break. So I'm hoping, I think the Rays have all the momentum in the world health-wise. They have all the momentum in the world depth-wise. The guys are all on board. They're helping each other out. They're playing decent baseball. The lineup seems to start chugging around. So if Franco can come in and give him that extra boost, the energy that him and Siri will have together is enough to kind of make the steam come out of a kettle, if you know what I mean.
Well, that kettle's a popping, boy, I'll tell you, man. And the ingredients are cooking, and I am looking forward to it. You've given us some really good insights here today, Matt. I want to thank you for that. Folks, we've been talking with Matt Germain, and like I said, you can find him on Twitter at Matt, MAT_Germain, GERMAIN _. So Matt has a lot to share on Twitter every day about the Rays and the minor leagues, who's coming up. So he's a great resource for me as far as trying to keep a thumbprint on what's happening. Matt, thanks also for sharing a bit of how you pull that information all together and share all those great thoughts with us.
No problem at all. It's always a pleasure. I enjoy being on this show for sure.
That was Matt Germain. If you want to find out more about what he has to say about the Rays, you can check him out on Twitter, and that's at Matt, MAT_Germain, GERMAIN _. And you can find me, Mark, at The Baseball Biz on Twitter as well. So thanks again for joining us on this episode of Baseball Biz. Remember, on whatever directory you're listening to us, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever, go ahead and make sure that you like us, share your thoughts, and subscribe. We look forward to talking with you guys again real soon. Special thanks to XTechRUX for the music rocking forward.